You ever see a dog sitting in an empty backyard, staring at a door that'll never open again? That was me. And I didn't move for 3 whole days. I guess I should start at the beginning, when the rumbling started. Boxes piled up inside the house, and the humans rushed around more than usual. I could feel the shift in energy, the way they spoke louder, moved faster. Their little girl, Katie, hugged me tighter that week. She didn't understand. I didn't either. One morning, I was tied out back with my old green rope, the one they only used when company was over, and I waited. I watched the car roll away. I waited some more. The sun sank behind the fence. Then the next day came. No one opened the door. My water bowl dried up. My stomach growled loud enough to wake me from short naps. The 3rd day, my bark turned hoarse. On the 4th, I stopped barking altogether. I don't know how long I lay curled up by the shed, dreaming about the sound of Katie's shoes. My name is Buddy, by the way. I'm not a small dog. Lab mix, I think. Shaggy brown coat with a black streak down my back. I wasn't a puppy anymore, but I wasn't old either. Just the kind of dog that most people forget about unless you're doing something wrong. The neighbors noticed first. A boy leaned over the fence and tossed me a sandwich. A woman shouted at someone on the phone. Then one afternoon, 2 strangers walked through the gate. One held a clipboard. The other had treats in his pocket. "Come here, boy," the taller man said, crouching like he knew what he was doing. I was too weak to stand. He had to lift me. They called it abandonment. They said I'd go to the county shelter and that someone might adopt me. But when they loaded me into the back of the van, I heard the guy with the clipboard say, "We'll have to hurry. Clock's ticking." The shelter wasn't what you'd call peaceful. Too many smells, too much noise, metal doors clanking, and people sighing. They checked me over, gave me some food, and stuck a paper on my kennel door. Every time someone passed, I sat up straight. Tail wagged once or twice. Then nothing. 4 days in, I knew the routine. Lights on, food down, walks if you're lucky. Some dogs barked constantly. Some whined. I stayed quiet. My throat still felt like sandpaper. That's when I saw her. Her name was Holly, and she wore a jacket with cartoon dogs on it. She walked with purpose but stopped at every kennel. She had a clipboard too, but hers was covered in stickers. When she reached me, she tilted her head like she was trying to read something on my face. "Hey, big guy," she said softly. "You don't look like trouble." I sat, tail flicking against the concrete. "Buddy," she read off the sheet. "You've had a rough week." I didn't move. I'd learned not to get too excited. But the next day, she came back. This time, she opened my kennel door and knelt beside me. "Mind if we try a walk?" She clicked a leash to my collar and waited. I hesitated. My legs felt heavy, but I stood. We walked slowly. I sniffed the yard fence, then the patch of grass. Holly didn't rush me. "You walk like you're carrying something heavy," she murmured. "We're gonna fix that." That night, I dreamed of Katie's laugh again. Over the next few days, Holly visited every morning. Sometimes she brought hot dogs. Sometimes she just sat with me. She talked to the staff, too, though I never understood what was being said. On the 7th day, I didn't see her at first. The lights came on, the doors opened, and I waited. Just as I was curling back down, she appeared, with a leash and a smile. "You ready, buddy?" I didn't know what that meant, but I followed her. We passed through a back hallway, past a desk, and out a door that didn't smell like bleach. I hesitated until she bent down. "You're not going back in? Come on, sweet boy. We reached a car. She opened the back seat, laid a towel down, and patted it. I climbed in. The ride was quiet. Trees blurred past the window. Holly didn't play music or talk much, just drove. We pulled up to a small white house with blue shutters. The kind of house that looked like it baked cookies, even when no one was home. A red truck sat in the driveway. A ceramic beagle stood next to the porch steps. "This is us," she said. Inside, I smelled cinnamon and something savory. A couch with a blanket waited near a fireplace. A metal bowl sat beside a small pantry door. A name tag with my name, Buddy, already hung on a new collar by the entrance. "Got it yesterday?" she said. "I was hoping you'd fit." I walked around slowly. Tails don't lie. Mine was moving like it remembered joy. That night I curled up near the couch. Holly sat cross-legged on the rug, reading some book about famous dogs. "You're safe now," she whispered, like it was a secret between just us. I believed her. The next morning I followed her out to the backyard. No rope, just green grass, a shaded corner with a doghouse, and a few toys. "You like tennis balls?" I didn't. I loved them. We had a routine. Morning walks. Meals with treats tucked inside kibble. A short ride to the park where she let me sniff everything I wanted. She didn't rush me. She never pulled the leash tight. Sometimes she'd talk on the phone with someone named Mom or her brother Jack. I'd hear her say things like, "He's better than I expected," or, "He looks at me like I hung the moon." Well, she kinda had. 2 weeks after I arrived, a big box came to the porch. Holly opened it and pulled out a soft dog bed. She set it down near the fireplace, fluffed it like a pillow. "For you, buddy." I sniffed it, then flopped right down. She laughed. We had our quiet days too, days when the sky turned gray and thunder rolled. I'd shake a little, but she'd sit with me and hum some silly song, the kind Katie used to sing. And slowly, I forgot what it felt like to be left behind. The rope, the empty backyard, the waiting. It faded, because now, every day, when Holly came home from work and said, "Hey buddy, I missed you," I knew I wasn't just a dog who was once forgotten. I was home. And this time no one was going anywhere without me. You know that feeling when your legs remember fear, even when your heart's finally learning peace? That was me the day Holly brought home the mailman. I didn't mean to growl, but the second that blue uniform turned the corner of the fence, something inside me snapped. My fur bristled. My teeth showed before I could stop them. I backed up fast, paws skidding on the patio. The man froze with his hands up. Holly stood in the middle, between us. "It's okay, buddy. This is Jerry. He's nice. He brings treats sometimes." But I didn't hear the words. All I saw was a tall man moving fast, holding a bag. Somewhere in my memory, that meant danger. I didn't even remember why. "He's not like the ones before," she said, crouching to my level. "And you're not there anymore. You're with me." She didn't touch me, just stayed close and talked. I looked at her eyes, then back at the mailman. Jerry slowly knelt and placed something on the ground. It was a biscuit, shaped like a bone. I watched him walk back to the gate, no sudden moves, then disappear. Only then did I step forward and sniff the treat. I didn't eat it right away, but later, when no one was watching, I carried it to my bed. It took a few weeks before I stopped flinching when the garbage truck roared by. Loud bangs still made my ears twitch, and I couldn't relax around strangers. But every time Holly noticed, she didn't make a big deal. She'd just sit with me, or hum, or toss a squeaky toy across the room like nothing was wrong. We had new routines now. Saturday mornings meant a trip to the dog park, where I mostly watched other dogs play. I didn't mind not chasing them. I liked the breeze, the open space, and the way Holly always brought water and a towel just for me. One Saturday, a woman approached us. She had a golden retriever who looked like she'd never known a bad day in her life. "Is he a rescue?" she asked. Holly nodded. "Picked him up a few weeks before his time ran out." The woman looked at me like I was a puzzle piece. "He's calm. That's rare. Most rescues are wild." Holly just smiled. "He's perfect the way he is." I walked a little taller the rest of the day. That evening, after dinner, Holly pulled out a shoebox and sat beside me on the rug. "Thought you might want to see this." Inside were photos. Not of me, but of dogs. Dogs with bandanas, dogs leaping through sprinklers, dogs sleeping upside down on couches. "These were the ones before you," she said. "Every one of them needed help. Just like you." She showed me a picture of a black and white mutt with floppy ears. "This was Scout. He was dumped in a parking lot. Took him a year to trust car rides." Then came Ginger, a beagle mix who'd been left in a crate during a heat wave. Then Max, then Lacey. One after another. "You're part of something special now," she whispered. I didn't understand the whole story, but I understood the feeling, the way she spoke about them, like they mattered forever. A few days later, she brought out something new. A harness. It was red, padded. Looked expensive. "Want to try this instead of the collar? Might be more comfortable." I stood still while she fitted it around me. It felt strange at first, like a hug I hadn't asked for, but when she clipped the leash to it and we stepped outside, I realized something. I could walk without that tightness on my neck. I could move more freely. I liked it. That afternoon, we went to a different park. This one had trails, trees, and a small pond where ducks floated like kings. Holly laughed when I tried to talk to one. I barked once, not aggressively, just curious. The duck ignored me, which felt like a win. On the way home, she stopped at a drive-thru and ordered something called a pup cup. I didn't know whipped cream could be that magical. She let me lick the entire cup clean in the back seat while she sipped something from a straw. Life had color again. But then came the thunderstorm. It started late, just after we went to bed. A low rumble first, then the crack. Lightning turned the windows into flashes of white. I jumped up from my bed, heart racing. The next boom made me run. I crawled under the coffee table, shaking. My nails scraped the hardwood. Holly came out in pajamas, holding a flashlight. She knelt beside the table and stayed quiet for a while. Then she laid a blanket on the floor next to me. "You don't have to come out," she whispered. "But I'm here." She waited with me for hours. Never pulled, never forced. Just hummed softly until my breaths slowed down. Eventually, I crawled out and rested my head on her leg. That's when she began to hum again, some melody I didn't know but liked anyway. The next morning, there was a towel waiting by the door and pancakes on the stove. She dropped one on purpose. I cleaned it up. That was our silent deal. Later that week, a man visited. He had gray hair and a deep voice. Holly called him Dad. "So this is the famous Buddy?" he said, crouching in the entryway. I approached slowly. He didn't reach out. Just let me sniff. "He's a thinker," the man chuckled. "You can see it in his eyes." Holly smiled. "He watches everything. Doesn't miss a thing." We sat on the porch while they talked. Holly's dad scratched behind my ears gently. I leaned in. "You've done good with him," he said. "He looks peaceful." Holly's eyes softened. "That's all I want for him." The next few weeks passed in a pattern I grew to love. Walks, treats, couch naps, and new smells. Once we drove to a farm where chickens strutted around like they owned the place. I didn't chase them, just watched. Holly laughed so hard she dropped her phone. Then came the vet visit. The car ride was quiet, but different. Holly hummed less. She rubbed my head at stoplights. At the clinic, a woman in blue scrubs led us to a room with a cold table. Holly lifted me gently onto it. "Just a checkup," she said. "Want to make sure you're healthy." The vet, a tall man with kind eyes, listened to my chest, looked in my ears, and felt my belly. "He's in good shape for a rescue," he said. "Few scars here and there. You don't see that often on labs unless—" Holly nodded. "I don't know the whole story, just what they told me." The vet scribbled something on a chart. "Whatever it was, you've done right by him." He gave me a biscuit on the way out. I forgave the thermometer. Back home, Holly set down a new toy on the living room floor. It squeaked and bounced and had a tail that wiggled. I barked once, then pounced. "There he is," she smiled. "That's the spark I was waiting for." That night, I curled beside her on the couch, instead of the bed near the fireplace. She didn't mind, just tossed a blanket over us, and turned on a movie about a detective dog. I didn't follow the plot, but I liked the music. Each day felt safer. Each night felt warmer. And though I still dreamed sometimes, of ropes and silence and dry bowls, I always woke up to the sound of Holly's voice saying, "Good morning, buddy." And that was enough to keep those dreams from taking hold. The next chapter of our life was waiting. And I wasn't alone anymore. You ever realize you're not afraid of something anymore, but your body still reacts like it's day one? That happened the first time I heard a moving truck rumble down our street. I was sprawled on the porch, belly in the sun, half asleep and dreaming about squirrels. Then the sound started, low and grinding, tires heavy on asphalt. My eyes opened, my muscles tensed, my heart beat fast. It sounded just like the truck that took them away. Holly stepped outside with a cup of tea. She saw me sitting bolt upright, tail rigid, ears flattened. "That truck's not for us, buddy," she said calmly, walking over. "You're not going anywhere." I looked at her face. She wasn't worried, so I tried not to be. But I stayed on high alert until the truck turned the corner and disappeared. Later that day, she brought out a paint can and a small wooden sign. I watched her from my spot by the porch step. She brushed light blue paint across a smooth board and added white letters. Buddy's Yard. She let me sniff it before setting it into the soft ground by the garden. "No truck's taking you now," she said. "Not when your name's on the lawn." It made me feel something I couldn't name, like I'd been claimed in the best way. The next week brought something new. A crate. It was large and had a cushion inside. Holly set it up in the corner of the living room, near my bed. "Just in case we take a trip," she said. The word trip didn't sit well with me at first, but she didn't force me inside. She just left the door open and dropped in a chew stick. Later, she added a blanket that smelled like her. I still preferred the couch, but I started taking naps inside the crate sometimes. It felt like a den. Safe. Predictable. One afternoon, while I was snoozing in there, Holly came home with grocery bags and a guest, a younger man with short blonde hair and a nervous smile. "This is Ben," Holly said. "My cousin. He's visiting from Oregon." Ben squatted down and held out his hand. "Hey, buddy. I brought bacon." That was a good start. I gave him a sniff and decided he passed. He stayed for 3 days. During that time, he threw the tennis ball better than Holly, cooked meat that I got to sample under the table, and talked a lot about something called hiking. I didn't know what that was, but his voice got excited when he described tall trees and rivers. On the second night, he and Holly sat on the porch with drinks while I lay beside them. "You did good with this one," he said. Holly smiled. "He saved me just as much." I blinked slowly. I didn't know I'd done anything that big. Ben left early in the morning with a pat on my head and a biscuit from his bag. I watched him drive away and then walked back inside, where Holly waited with my leash. "Walk first, breakfast after," she said. Our routine had become part of me. Every step predictable. Every corner of our block known. The smells of the bakery 2 streets over. The neighbor's cat, who stared at me through the window but never moved. The fire hydrant that seemed to hold stories from 100 dogs. But then one morning, the walk didn't go as planned. A dog got loose from its yard, a black and white pit bull with a red collar. He came barreling down the sidewalk toward us, barking, not in greeting. Holly stepped back, tightening the leash, but I didn't run. I stood between her and the dog, tail stiff, body ready. The pit bull skidded to a stop just feet away. We locked eyes. And then his owner came running, yelling, "Buster, get back here!" The pit bull hesitated, glanced at his person, and bolted back the way he came. The man caught him by the collar and apologized breathlessly. "Sorry, ma'am. Fence latch didn't catch this morning. He's friendly, just too excited." Holly nodded, breath caught in her chest. "It's okay. No harm done." I stood still, watching the dog disappear. She knelt beside me after the man walked away. "You stood your ground, protected me." I didn't feel brave. I felt electric, but also kind of proud. That night she gave me extra dinner, chicken and rice with shredded carrots, my favorite. A few days later, we had a surprise visitor, Holly's mom. She had silver hair tied back in a bun and smelled like lavender. She wasn't loud, but she moved quickly, and I wasn't sure how to react. I stayed by the hallway for a while, watching. Eventually, she crouched and waited. "Hello, sweet boy," she said softly. "I'm Nana." That word made Holly smile. I stepped forward. Her hands were gentle. Her touch was warm. Nana stayed for the weekend. She wore sweaters that I liked lying against and made muffins that Holly let me sample. She also talked about her old dog, Charlie. He was a border collie, smarter than most people I know. One night she rubbed my ears and said, "You've got that same look he had, like you've been through something but chose to love anyway." That sat with me. The seasons changed slowly. The air cooled. Leaves turned gold and red and crunched under my paws. I loved fall. The smells were stronger, the walks cooler, and Holly started baking again. Apple slices dropped to the floor. Cinnamon drifted through the house. I wore a scarf once, red and black plaid. Holly laughed and took pictures. "You're a lumberjack now," she said. "Buddy the Brave." I wasn't sure what a lumberjack was, but I liked the sound of it. Then came Halloween. Kids in costumes, doorbells ringing, squeals of laughter. Holly sat with me on the couch, bowl of candy beside her, watching old movies. I didn't mind the sounds. Not anymore. I'd come far since that first day. Still, the front door was a lot that night. So after a few knocks, Holly looked at me and said, "Want to hide in your crate for a bit?" I padded over and curled up inside. She covered part of it with a blanket and left a bone inside. It felt safe, like a small room all my own. In the morning, she gave me scrambled eggs and let me stay in bed a little longer. "You were such a good boy last night," she whispered. One chilly weekend, we visited a cabin in the woods. Holly called it a retreat. The drive was long, but peaceful. Trees lined the road like tall protectors, and the sky looked cleaner somehow. The cabin had a fireplace, thick rugs, and windows that framed trees like paintings. We spent the days walking quiet trails, hearing only birds and the crunch of leaves. I saw deer for the first time. We didn't chase each other, just looked. At night, Holly made cocoa and read books out loud. She let me sleep on the bed, just that once, she said. But after that, she never asked me to get down again. I'd learned so many new things, new scents, new people, new words. One evening, Holly looked at me after brushing my coat and said, "You're blooming." I didn't know what that meant, but it felt like a good thing. And every night, as the stars appeared above our little white house, I'd curl into my bed, the red harness hung by the door, the crate waiting just in case, and Holly humming some quiet tune in the other room. The world was still loud sometimes, still unpredictable, but not scary the way it used to be. Because now, whatever came next, I knew I wouldn't face it alone. You ever feel the wind shift and know something's coming, even before it shows up? That's how it was the morning Holly took out the suitcase. I watched from my bed as she laid it on the couch, unzipped it, and started folding clothes into neat little stacks. Socks, jackets, those soft pants she only wore when she traveled. The zipper made that familiar sound, the one I remembered from a long time ago, before everything changed. I stood up and walked over slowly, ears low, heart unsure. She noticed right away and turned to face me. "Hey," she said gently, crouching down. "You're coming too, big guy. This is for both of us." That stopped me in my tracks. She smiled. "It's just a road trip, visiting my brother Jack and his family upstate. They've got a huge yard. You'll love it." I tilted my head. Road trips had never meant good things before, but this time it was her voice telling me, her hands packing treats into a small duffel, her fingers clipping my tag to a harness I already liked. The next morning, we set off just as the sun peeked through the trees. I had the back seat to myself, blanket, chew toy, and all. She cracked a window just enough for me to catch the wind. I stuck my nose out and took in the scent of pines, something roasting from a nearby diner, and the steady rhythm of a world that wasn't trying to hurt me anymore. The drive was long, but easy. Holly sang to the radio sometimes, talked to me like I was a person, and made sure I had water at every stop. Once, she even bought me a hamburger without onions. We split the fries. We arrived just past lunch. Jack's house was bigger than ours, with a long gravel driveway and trees everywhere. I jumped out, sniffing everything at once. The grass smelled different, wild, full of stories. Jack came out first. Tall brown hair, friendly eyes. He didn't rush, just crouched and held out his hand. "So this is the famous Buddy," he said. "Heard a lot about you, pal." I sniffed and wagged, slowly, but it was there. Then came his boys, Eli and Henry. Both under 10, both full of energy and grass stains. They were loud, but not in the wrong way, just happy. I flinched once, when Eli ran toward me with a plastic sword, but Holly stepped in. "Slow, sweetheart," she said firmly. "He needs a little space." Eli nodded fast. "Sorry, buddy. Want a stick instead?" He found one right away, and that was the start of our game. By the end of the first hour, I'd chased it 5 times, flopped over twice, and accepted 2 gentle head pats. The backyard was a wonderland. Logs, bushes, patches of soft dirt perfect for digging if no one was looking. Holly sat on the porch, sipping something warm, watching me like she always did. Not because she didn't trust me, because she cared. At dinner, they let me stay under the table. Jack gave me a slice of meatloaf when he thought no one was watching. Holly noticed and smirked, but didn't say a word. That night, I slept by Holly's feet in the guest room. She whispered, "You're doing great, bud," before turning off the light. The next few days were full of adventure. We went on short hikes with the boys, who liked pretending we were explorers. I was their loyal beast companion. Once they tied a towel around my shoulders like a cape. I didn't mind. I kind of liked being their hero. One afternoon, while Holly helped Jack fix something on the porch, I stayed with the boys by a creek behind the house. They skipped stones. I watched. Then a shout. "Eli!" He'd stepped on a loose rock and slipped into the water. Not deep, but cold and fast enough to scare him. I was in before I knew it. I grabbed his jacket with my teeth and pulled. It wasn't dramatic, but it worked. He got his footing and scrambled to the bank, shivering. Holly came running, eyes wide, Jack behind her. "He's okay," Henry said, pointing. "Buddy helped." Eli nodded, wrapping his arms around me. He saved me. I stood still, water dripping from my fur. Holly knelt and pressed her forehead to mine. "You're something else," she whispered. They wrapped Eli in blankets and gave me a whole sausage that night. I slept like a rock. The next day, Holly and Jack talked on the porch. I lay between them. "I still can't believe he pulled Eli like that," Jack said. Holly nodded. "I believe it. He just knows. He watches." Jack looked at me, thoughtful. "How long's he been with you now?" "Not quite 6 months, but it feels like he's always been there." Jack smiled. "Well, if you ever get tired of him—" "Never," she cut in. I wagged slowly. Before we left, Eli gave me a drawing. It showed me wearing a cape, standing between him and a rushing river. He'd written, "Buddy the Brave." I kept that paper in my crate. Holly tucked it in beside my blanket. We drove home through light snow, the kind that dusts trees without sticking to the roads. The world looked quiet, like it was holding its breath. Back home, everything smelled familiar. My toys were right where I left them. The porch light flicked on as we pulled in. That night, I curled into my bed, and Holly covered me with an extra blanket. "Best boy," she whispered. December rolled in slowly. Holly brought out boxes of decorations, and I watched as she strung lights along the porch. A wreath with a big red bow went on the door. Then she opened a smaller box and pulled out a stocking. It had a paw print on it, my name stitched across the top. "Santa comes for dogs, too," she said with a wink. I didn't know who Santa was, but I liked the sound of him. One evening, she brought home a tree. Not the kind outside. This one stood in the living room and smelled like pine and snow. She hung shiny orbs and strings of popcorn from its branches. I sat nearby, watching carefully. She held up a small ornament in the shape of a bone. "This is yours, first Christmas." She hung it right in the middle. We had visitors, music, laughter, and through it all, I stayed close to her side. Every night, after the last guest left, she'd kneel beside me and say, "You handled that so well. You're such a good boy." Sometimes I'd nuzzle her chest, breathing in her calm. Other times, I'd just lay my head in her lap. Snow fell the week before Christmas. Holly opened the door and let me explore the backyard. I stepped carefully at first, then with joy. The cold didn't bother me. The world had turned white and soft, like a fresh page. I chased flakes, rolled, dug. When I looked up, she was filming me with her phone, laughing. "You're ridiculous," she said, "and I love it." That night, she made stew, and the house smelled like warmth. We sat by the fire, lights twinkling on the tree. She leaned back against the couch and looked down at me. "You've changed my whole life, you know." I blinked slowly. Tail wagged. Whatever was coming next, I was ready. Because home wasn't just a place anymore. It was her. And me. And everything we'd built together. One quiet, steady step at a time. You know how some days sneak up on you with surprises so small they almost pass unnoticed? That's what the first snowfall of January felt like. Just a soft hush outside the window, and the faintest crunch under Holly's boots when she stepped out to check the mail. I stood by the door, watching flakes drift down like someone had shaken powdered sugar from the sky. She turned and smiled at me. "You want to come see?" I did. I really did. Outside, the world was quieter than usual. The snow covered everything evenly. No footprints, no tracks, just clean white. I walked beside her. No leash needed. I never went far. Not anymore. I sniffed the base of the mailbox, then followed her around the corner of the house. We paused by the little garden, where my buddy's yard sign still stood, half buried now in white. She brushed it off gently. "Still yours," she said. Later that day, she pulled out a book from the shelf, something with old pages and photos. I lay by the couch as she flipped through it. Every so often, she'd look over at me and smile. I didn't know the people in the pictures, but I understood the tone of her voice when she talked about them. "This was my grandma's dog, Barney, a beagle. He once dug a hole so deep they couldn't find him for an hour." She laughed, soft and far away. Then came a picture of a black lab sitting beside a little boy. "That's me with our first dog, Milo. He only had 3 legs but ran faster than any dog on the block." I scooted closer, resting my chin on her leg. She rubbed behind my ears and whispered, "You'd have liked him." Those stories made me feel like part of something longer than just the past few months. Like I wasn't just the start of something for Holly. I was the continuation of a history full of dogs who mattered. That night, we had leftovers for dinner. Turkey slices for her, rice and green beans for me, plus some bits she accidentally dropped. She always did that. I played along. The days after were slow, cozy. She worked from home more often now, sitting at her desk in the corner while I curled up nearby. I liked the rhythm of her typing, the occasional sip from her mug, the way she'd pause mid-call to toss me a chew or say, "Hang tight, buddy. I'll take you out in 5. Sometimes she talked to people on the screen. One day I heard her say, "He's right here. Want to see?" She turned her camera and pointed it at me. I looked up from my bed and wagged. "Ah," a voice said from the other side. "He's gorgeous." Holly beamed. "Right? He's the best coworker I've ever had." I liked that title. Coworker. It felt like I had a job, like I was helping her just by being here. A few days later, she invited a friend over. A woman named Sarah with bright eyes and a laugh like wind chimes. She smelled like coffee and lemon. At first, I stayed near the hallway, but she knelt and offered her hand. "I've heard so much about you, big guy." I approached slowly, tail low but wagging. Sarah looked at Holly. "He's even sweeter in person." They sat on the couch with mugs while I lay nearby, listening. They talked about everything. Books, work, something called a community center. At one point, Holly mentioned a fundraiser. We're trying to raise enough to redo the dog run. It's all mud and weeds now. Sarah nodded. Well, if you ever need a mascot. They both looked at me. Holly grinned. He already acts like one. That gave her an idea. The next weekend, she dressed me in a vest, blue, with a patch that read, "Adopt, don't shop." We drove to the community center, where people were gathered with tables and banners. Dogs of all shapes and sizes trotted around on leashes. Some barked, some whined, some stared wide-eyed at everything. I stayed close to Holly, calm, observing. A few kids came over to pet me. One girl with pink gloves asked if I had been rescued. Holly nodded. He was, and now he helps us rescue more. That day, we stayed for hours. People asked about me, took pictures. Holly answered every question with warmth. I got a new toy from one of the booths, a stuffed squirrel. I carried it proudly all the way home. That night, she hung the vest by the door. "You're a celebrity now," she said. I didn't know what that meant, but it made her happy, and that was enough for me. Soon, I got used to those trips. Once or twice a month, we'd go to adoption events or fundraisers. I wore my vest. Holly wore her smile. We were a team. Sometimes people asked if I was up for adoption. Holly always answered the same way. "He's mine, but there are others who need homes. Come meet them." Spring crept in slowly. The snow melted, revealing grass beneath. We started going on longer walks again. The creek behind our neighborhood rushed louder now, full from winter's gift. Birds returned, and Holly opened the windows more often. She started planting again, little herbs and flowers in pots by the porch. I sat beside her as she worked, sniffing each new plant. Basil, mint, lavender. My nose twitched. One afternoon, as she watered the pots, she said, "We're thinking of fostering again." I blinked. She crouched beside me. "You'd be the senior dog, the example. You think you're ready?" I didn't answer. Not with words. But I stood tall, nudged her hand, and wagged once. A few days later, we met Rex. He was half my size, scrappy, wiry, all legs and nerves. Picked up from a freeway with no collar. He didn't know how to sit still. Didn't know what a treat was either. Just paced in circles. Holly brought him home in a crate, set it up in the kitchen. I watched from a distance. Rex didn't make eye contact, didn't lie down. That night I lay near the crate, not close enough to scare him, just close enough to be there. The next morning he barked at the window. Holly gently said no. I walked over, stood beside him, and looked out too. We both stared at nothing for a while. He quieted. By the third day, he followed me. By the fifth, he tried to copy how I sat before meals. He was clumsy about it, but learning. Holly noticed. "He's watching you," she said. "You're teaching him without trying." Weeks passed. Rex stopped shaking when the doorbell rang. He learned to wait at the gate. He even started sleeping in the sunspot on the living room rug. My spot. I didn't mind. He needed it more. Then one day, a couple came to visit. They brought a leash and a new collar. Rex wagged when they knelt beside him. It was his time. Holly talked to them at length. I sat nearby, listening. She handed them a note with Rex's routine and quirks. Then she knelt, kissed the top of his head, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Rex looked back once as they walked down the driveway. Then he climbed into their car and was gone. The house felt quiet that evening. Holly sat beside me on the porch. "You did so well. I'm proud of you." I leaned against her. We didn't say anything else. A week later, we got a thank you card. A photo of Rex asleep in a hammock, tongue lolling out. Holly hung it on the fridge. Right next to Eli's drawing, it became our new rhythm. Every few months, a new foster. Some stayed longer, some left quickly. I stayed steady through it all, teaching them what I could, sharing what space they needed. And every time one left, Holly would sit with me and say, "They were lucky to have you." I didn't always understand why they left, but I understood the part where someone new came in scared and left feeling braver. And I knew that somewhere along the way, I had become more than a dog who'd been left behind. I had become someone others looked to. And it was all because someone had looked at me once and said, "You're home now." You ever walk into a place that smells like 1,000 stories all at once? That's what the shelter smelled like when we walked in again. Not as a resident this time, but as a guest. Holly clipped my vest on before we left the house. She knelt, brushing a stray hair off my face. "They're starting a therapy dog program," she said. "We're not official yet, but I think you're ready." I didn't know what therapy dog meant, but when she talked like that, I knew it was important. We arrived just as a group of kids lined up outside the reading room. The shelter had added new spaces since we were last here. Colorful rugs, bookshelves, toys and puzzles, and a little chalkboard sign outside the door that read, "Reading with Buddy." They remembered me. Holly had sent in a picture months ago. Now my name was on a schedule. I lay on a rug while the kids came in one by one. Some were quiet, some were loud, some asked to pet me, others just sat near me with their books open. One boy with glasses sat with his back to me, his legs crossed tightly. Holly gave him space. I did too. By the end of the session, he turned slightly, just enough to see me out of the corner of his eye. The volunteers smiled. "That's the most he's moved in 3 weeks." Holly looked at me with a pride I didn't quite understand, but I felt it. Deep. We came back the next week, and the next. Soon, the reading room became our regular spot. The kids started recognizing me. One little girl drew a picture of me lying on the rug with 3 hearts above my head. She gave it to Holly and whispered, "He listens better than anyone." Holly framed it. Sometimes when the kids were gone, we'd visit the kennels. Some dogs barked, some cowered, some just watched. I knew that feeling. Holly would kneel by each one, offering a kind word, a treat, or just silence. I'd sit behind her, calm, grounded. It didn't feel like we were just visitors. It felt like we were showing them what was possible. After one visit, a staff member pulled Holly aside. "You should consider training him formally. He's got the temperament. We've seen dozens, but he stands out." That night, Holly sat on the floor beside me, laptop open, clicking through websites. "Therapy dog training," she murmured. "It's mostly stuff you already do, buddy." I didn't need certificates to tell me I was good, but if it made her smile like that, I was all in. Training started the next week. A group class with 5 other dogs. Holly drove us out to a big room with padded floors and bright lights. We walked in together, her hand steady on the leash. The instructor, a man with a kind face and a calm voice, gave each dog a colored bandana. Mine was green. "Green means confident," he said. "Let's see how that holds up." The first session was full of noises and commands. Sit, stay, leave it, heel. I already knew most of it, but it was different doing it in a room with dogs panting, whining, barking. Still, I stayed close to Holly. I watched her face more than the others. She didn't need to speak loudly. A nod was enough. A glance. We were in sync. Over the weeks, the class shrank. Some dogs moved too fast, some got too nervous, but we kept coming. Holly practiced with me at the park, in the hardware store, outside the grocery. People stared sometimes. She just smiled and said, "Training for a good cause." One day, we passed a woman crying on a bench outside the pharmacy. Holly slowed down. "You okay?" she asked gently. The woman nodded, wiped her eyes. "Just a long day." Holly glanced at me. "Mind if Buddy says hi?" The woman looked at me, eyes soft. "Sure." I approached slowly, sat at her feet. She reached out and ran a hand along my back. "You're so calm, like you've seen things." I stayed still until she smiled. Then I nudged her hand. That moment didn't get written down anywhere. No certificate for it. But Holly said later, "That's the part they can't teach. You just know." We passed the final evaluation in late April. The instructor handed Holly a patch and said, "You've got something rare here. A dog who's not just good, but generous." Generous. I liked that word. It made me think of the warm spots on the rug, the treats I shared with nervous fosters, the way I waited by the door for Holly each afternoon, even though I always knew she was coming back. With certification came new places. We visited a retirement home next. It smelled like flowers and bleach and soup. The halls were quiet, but the moment I walked in, heads turned. "Who's this handsome fellow?" someone called. "Don't let me pet him or I'll never let him go," another said. I sat by their chairs, offered paws, rested my head on wrinkled laps. Some people talked to me, others just smiled. One man, silent at first, finally whispered, "I had a collie once. She was smarter than most people." Holly nodded. "They usually are." We went every Thursday. They called it Buddy Day. Each time we walked out, Holly would kneel beside me at the car and say, "You're making ripples, bud, real ones." Spring melted into summer. The shelter held another event at the park. This time, we were featured. A banner with my photo hung near the booths. It read, "From forgotten to forever, meet Buddy." We met a woman who had just lost her senior dog. She cried into my fur and said, "You remind me of Max, just the way you sit." Holly offered her a pamphlet about fostering. That night, she emailed to say she wanted to try. "You inspire people," Holly said, reading the message aloud. And not just me. Back home, our days stayed simple. Walks in the early light, quiet afternoons on the porch, dinner with something extra every Friday. Once, she grilled salmon. I got the skin. Our porch had new chairs now. A neighbor dropped them off after her move. Holly painted them blue to match the trim. I had my spot beneath them, shaded and cool. One afternoon, as we watched a storm roll in, Holly leaned over and said, "I used to think I rescued you, but now I know. We found each other." That night, I curled up closer than usual. There was no thunder, just rain, and her steady breathing beside me on the rug. In the dark, with the wind tapping against the windows, I felt something I couldn't explain. Like every hard thing from before had folded itself into this moment, a soft place to land. And though I didn't know what the next season would bring, I trusted her voice, her footsteps, the sound of her laughter in the kitchen. That was my compass now, and I followed it everywhere. You ever catch a scent so strong it pulls you out of whatever moment you're in? That's what happened when I smelled peanut butter and rain on the same breeze. It reminded me of the first snack Holly ever gave me, on the front porch after a storm. She had a way of giving things meaning. A certain blanket, a corner of the yard, even a squeaky squirrel. Not because the objects were special on their own, but because she wrapped them in love so tightly that you couldn't help but feel it every time you saw them again. It was a Monday morning in early July when I noticed the new box on the porch. A brown cardboard one with red tape and a label Holly squinted at. "From Jack," she said, lifting it inside. She opened it at the kitchen counter, pulling out old books, 2 mugs, and a faded denim jacket. Her eyes softened as she turned the sleeves over. "That's his high school jacket," she told me. "Can't believe he sent this." I sniffed the edge. It smelled like road trips and sawdust. She folded it carefully and set it beside a photo frame that hadn't been there yesterday. We went for a walk after. Same loop, same hydrants and bushes, but I felt a little tug in the air, like change was inching in on quiet feet. Later that week, she cleaned the spare room. Not just a sweep and dusting, she vacuumed under the bed, fluffed the pillows, and even opened the window. The air smelled like lemons and fabric softener. That night, while we sat on the couch, she scratched under my collar and said, "Jack's coming to visit again, just for a few days." I wagged. I remembered Jack. He was good with meatloaf. He arrived on a Thursday, carrying a duffel and a guitar case. I met him at the door, tail thumping once, then twice. "Hey, buddy," he said. "Still the king of the porch, huh?" He knelt and let me sniff his sleeve. I approved. The house buzzed a little more when he was around. His voice carried down the hall. He and Holly stayed up later, laughing in the kitchen. Once, he played a song on his guitar while she cooked, and I lay on the rug in the middle, catching all the smells and sounds. The next morning, he took me for a walk. Just him and me. "So," he said, "she tells me you've been playing guardian angel to a bunch of foster pups." I walked beside him, steady. He stopped to tie his shoe and looked at me like I had something to teach him. "She's different since you came around, you know. Happier, more sure of things." We took the long way back. When we returned, Holly was in the garden, dirt on her knees. She waved and smiled at both of us. "Boys club out for a stroll?" she called. Jack laughed. "We solved all the world's problems. You're welcome." That evening, they set up a puzzle on the dining table. 1,000 tiny pieces, all sky and trees. I watched from under the table. Every so often a piece would fall, and I'd nose it back toward them. One night, Holly got quiet. Jack was thumbing through a book, and she just sat there, holding her tea. "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated. "I've been thinking about applying to that regional coordinator job, the one with the rescue network." Jack raised his eyebrows. "That's a big shift." "I know," she said, "but I feel like it matters. And Buddy's changed the way I see everything." Jack looked at me. "Well then, if he's in, I'm in." She smiled. Not just at him, at me too, like we were both part of the plan. She filled out the application the next day. I lay beside her as she typed, pausing every now and then to chew her lip or reread a sentence. When she clicked the submit button, she turned to me. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of us." I wagged once. That seemed like the right answer. The next morning, Jack packed his things. I sat in the doorway, watching. He knelt down, scratched behind my ears, and said, "Take care of her, big guy. She needs you more than she lets on." I licked his hand once before he stood. Holly hugged him at the curb, and then he was gone again. Summer rolled on. Hot days, warm nights. Holly set up a small fan near my bed. We spent more time in the shade, fewer long walks, sometimes just a short trip around the block before breakfast. One evening, a woman stopped us on the sidewalk. She was in her 60s, maybe, walking slowly, eyes kind. "That's a good dog," she said, nodding toward me. Holly smiled. "He's the best. You can see it in his posture. Confident, but not cocky." Holly chuckled. "He's been through a lot." The woman nodded. "Dogs like that? They change things. People, too." We walked home in silence for a while. Holly finally said, "I forget how different you are now. It feels like you've always been this way." I didn't know what to say, so I just leaned into her side a little more. 2 weeks later, a letter came. She held the envelope in both hands, sitting on the porch steps. I sat beside her. "Regional coordinator," she read aloud. "They want me to come in for an interview." She folded the paper and looked at me. "It's a big jump. More hours, more travel, but also more help for more dogs." I didn't wag. I just watched. I could tell she was thinking about how it might change things. The interview was scheduled for the following Wednesday. She laid out 2 outfits the night before and talked to herself in the mirror. "You've got this," she said. "You've been doing this work for years. Buddy believes in you, so believe in yourself." I waited by the door while she got ready. When she finally stepped out, I tilted my head. She looked strong, steady, like the Holly I knew from the first day we met. She kissed the top of my head. "Wish me luck." I barked once, quietly. She grinned. She came home tired, but smiling. No words at first, just dropped her bag, sat beside me, and let out a long breath. "I think it went well," she said. Then she got quiet again, head resting on my shoulder. We stayed like that until the sun set. A week passed, then 2. The waiting was heavier than either of us expected. She distracted herself with projects, painted the fence, organized the pantry, even rearranged the living room. But every time the phone rang, she jumped. When the call finally came, she didn't say a word for a few seconds, just listened, nodded, smiled faintly. Then she said, "Thank you. I'd be honored." She hung up and looked at me with wide eyes. "We got it." I jumped up, barked twice. She laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "It's going to be a lot, buddy, but I think we're ready." That night, we sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. She brought out a blanket and 2 mugs, coffee for her, ice cubes for me. She leaned back in the chair, staring up. "You know, I used to be afraid of big changes. But with you here, they don't feel so scary anymore." I rested my head on her foot. She whispered, "We're building something, 1 dog at a time." And I knew then that wherever she led, I'd follow. Because home wasn't a place or a routine anymore. It was movement, growth, quiet trust. And most of all, it was her. You ever feel a house breathe? Not like lungs, but in its own quiet way. Ours did, that first week after Holly started her new job. The creaks were softer, the air warmer, the sounds slower, but different. She still left at the same time every morning, still kissed the top of my head before walking out the door. But now, she carried a different bag. Sleek, black, zipped shut tight. It smelled like printed papers and nervous energy, like something beginning. I waited by the window the first day, watched her car pull away, and stayed in my usual spot until the sun climbed high. She wasn't gone longer than usual, but the day felt stretched thin, like it had more space to fill. When she came home, her smile was tired but proud. She dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and crouched beside me. "First day down," she said. "We're doing this." I wagged. then pressed my head into her chest. She held on for a moment, longer than usual. The new job meant more meetings, more phone calls, more emails typed late into the night. But it also meant more connections, more names spoken with care, more ideas scribbled into notebooks, more dogs helped from far beyond our porch. On weekends, we still visited the shelter, still walked the familiar halls. But now, people greeted her with a different energy. "That's her," someone whispered once. "The new regional lead." She didn't act different. She still crouched at every kennel, still whispered soft encouragement to nervous dogs, still sat on the rug during story time, legs crossed, back straight, my head resting on her knee. One Saturday, a group of teenagers arrived for community service. They fidgeted and scrolled their phones while a staff member gave a talk. Then Holly stepped forward. She introduced herself, then me. "This is Buddy. He was left behind by his first family, spent days alone before someone brought him in. Now he helps us teach others about second chances." I lay still, but alert, watching. "Buddy doesn't bark much," she said, "but he listens, and sometimes that's all someone really needs." A girl in the back wiped her eye. Later, as they walked dogs and cleaned bowls, I stayed nearby. One boy, taller than the rest, asked to brush me. He'd never held a brush before. Holly showed him how, and he did it slowly, unsure at first. "He likes long strokes down his back," she said. He didn't talk much, but he came back the next week, and the one after that. Back home, our routine shifted. She came home later some nights, but always made time to sit with me, even if just for 10 minutes, even if all we did was lie on the floor sharing silence. She started writing in a journal. I watched her most evenings, curled at her feet. Sometimes she read parts aloud. Today, we placed 2 seniors, long-term residents. One of them, Daisy, was 13. Her new family drove 4 hours to meet her. She looked at me then. "It's working. This job. It's really working." That week, a new foster arrived. A basset hound named Frank. Short legs, long ears, eyes like puddles. He snored louder than anything I'd ever heard. He was older, moved slow, didn't care much for toys, but he liked the fireplace and the blanket Holly laid down for him. He followed me around the house, watched how I walked, how I waited at the door, how I sat for treats. He didn't try to outpace me, just stayed close. Holly called us the Old Souls Club. Frank stayed for nearly 2 months, longer than most. His legs gave him trouble in the cold, so Holly carried him down the porch stairs when needed. One day, a woman came to visit. Middle-aged, soft-spoken, with a kind smile and a slow walk. She sat on the floor beside Frank and let him crawl into her lap. She didn't rush, didn't ask for anything. Just stayed. Holly watched, and I did too. After she left, Holly turned to me. "I think she's the one." A week later, Frank left. We watched from the porch as the car pulled away. Holly waved. I stayed quiet. She didn't cry this time, just sat beside me, her hand resting gently on my back. "He was ready," she said. August brought heat waves. We spent more time indoors, curtains drawn, fans running. Holly set up a kiddie pool in the yard. At first, I avoided it. Then one afternoon, I stepped in. Cold water to the ankles, then up to the belly. She clapped her hands and laughed. "You're braver than I thought," she said. I stood there, unsure what I'd accomplished. But it felt like something. At night, we played a new game. She'd hide treats around the living room and I'd sniff them out. She said it kept my brain sharp. I just liked the rewards. Sometimes she talked about work while I searched. They want to start a program for long-distance adoptions, she said. We'd coordinate transport, find homes where the matches really stick. I found a biscuit under the couch and looked up. Exactly, she smiled. You get it. Her confidence grew. I could see it, hear it in her voice, in the way she carried herself when we walked through the shelter, when she answered questions from new volunteers, when she trained the staff at the smaller branches. She was building something bigger than us, but never without me. One Sunday, she brought home a stack of letters, handwritten, from kids who had met me at reading day, or teens from the shelter shifts, or families who had adopted after talking to her. She read them aloud. Dear Buddy, you're my favorite part of Saturdays. I want to be calm like you. Dear Miss Holly, you helped me believe dogs can change people. Thank you. Dear Buddy, when I pet you, I forget about my mom being sick for a little while. She placed the letters in a box and labeled it. Good days. Whenever things felt heavy, she'd pull one out, read it aloud, let the words settle into the quiet like a warm blanket. The summer wore on. More fosters came and went, a husky with energy to spare, a shy terrier who flinched at doorbells, a hound mix who refused to sleep anywhere but the laundry room. Each one left a mark. But through it all, I stayed steady. Her anchor, her quiet reminder that beginnings didn't have to be loud to be strong. One night, she set a photo frame on the shelf. It held 2 pictures. The first of me at the shelter, thin and tired, lying in a kennel corner. The second of me in the garden, head held high, sunlight on my back. She looked at both for a long time. Then she said, I forget how far we've come until I see it like this. I nudged her hand. She scratched behind my ears. We're not done. You know, she whispered. Not even close. And I believed her. Because the house still breathed. The days still opened slowly. And every time she stepped through the door and looked at me like I was the very best thing she'd ever seen. I knew we were still in the middle of the story. Still moving forward. Still building something worth every quiet, patient step. You ever notice how quiet moments feel louder when they come after a life full of motion? That's what September brought. Stillness. Not sad or empty. Just quiet. Like the world was pausing to look around and appreciate what had grown. The mornings were cooler now. Holly started wearing sweaters again, long sleeves soft with wear. She swapped her iced coffee for something warm, always in the same blue mug. The porch didn't see as much traffic, just us most days, sitting while the sun climbed slow over the trees. The leaves started changing early. Bright bursts of red and orange reached across the yard. Holly set up a rake and a big plastic bin, and I watched from my shaded patch as she gathered them, humming under her breath. Sometimes she tossed a few into the air just to see me chase them. I did. Every time. Just to hear her laugh. Work kept her busy, but different now. It was more meetings at home, more long calls where she paced and scribbled ideas. She'd say things like sponsorship outreach and cross-state transport logistics and senior dog priority placement. But even after the longest days, she still found time to sit beside me on the floor. Some nights she didn't talk at all, just rested her hand on my back, the way she did when words weren't needed. A few weeks into the month, she came home with a new binder. She set it on the counter with a sigh, rubbed the back of her neck, and opened it slowly. They want to build a new facility, she said. One just for the hard-to-place dogs, the ones who need a little more time. I looked up from my bed. It'll be a big project. Could take a year, maybe more. Her voice wasn't nervous. It was focused, determined. She leaned down and kissed my head. And I'm going to help them do it. The following week, she took me with her to one of the meetings. A quiet office tucked behind the main shelter, where a group of people sat around a table covered in maps and paperwork. "This is Buddy," she said as we entered. "You all know his story. He's the reason I'm here." No one asked questions. They just smiled. After that, I came to more meetings. Not everyone, but enough that people started bringing me snacks. One volunteer left a blanket under the table just for me. I got used to the sound of markers squeaking on whiteboards, the crinkle of granola bar wrappers, and the low buzz of ideas taking root. Fall deepened. The days got shorter. The yard turned from gold to bare brown. Holly lit candles in the evenings, their scent filling the house with cinnamon and clove. I stayed close to her feet, soaking up the warmth from the fireplace. We still fostered, though slower now. One dog at a time. Holly said she wanted to give each one more space, more presence. I liked that. It made things quieter, clearer. The last foster was a shepherd mix named Roscoe. High-strung, sharp-eyed, but loyal. He followed me like a shadow the moment he stepped inside. Holly gave him a worn toy, and he carried it around like a promise. One morning, I woke up, and Roscoe wasn't beside me. He was pacing the hallway, whining softly. Holly got up and knelt in front of him. "Bad dreams?" He pushed his head into her chest. She held him for a long time. I waited just behind them. When she looked up at me, her eyes were glassy. "You always know when they need extra?" she whispered. Roscoe stayed with us longer than most, but he left brighter, confident, tail high when he walked out the door with his new family. Holly and I watched from the porch. Again. After he left, there weren't any new fosters for a while. Just us. And the house. And the rhythm we'd built. Then came a morning unlike the others. It started the same. Breakfast, the porch, the breeze. But I was tired. Not in the way a walk could fix. Just heavy. Holly noticed. "You okay, bud?" she asked, crouching beside me. I wagged, slowly. She pressed her forehead to mine and didn't say anything else. We skipped our walk. She sat with me in the sun, read a few pages from her book. Let the hours pass quietly. The next few days, I moved slower. My legs didn't respond like they used to. My breath felt deeper, harder to hold. Holly adjusted everything. Food, pace, her schedule. She carried me down the porch steps, brought my water closer to the rug. One evening, she laid out 3 of my favorite toys. I didn't feel like playing, but I nosed the squirrel. She smiled. "Still in there," she said gently. The next morning, she didn't go to work. She sat beside me on the floor, phone in hand. I heard her voice tremble just once. "I'd like the vet to come here, if possible. I think we're close." That day was slow, kind. She opened every window, let in the breeze, played soft music, the kind she always hummed when she cleaned on Sundays. We looked through our box of good days. She read every letter out loud. She laid next to me on the rug and whispered stories I already knew. How I looked the first day she saw me, how I stared at the moving truck, how I stepped into the crate on my own, how I let the scared ones follow my lead. "You've changed me, buddy," she said. "More than any human ever has." That afternoon, the vet arrived. A gentle man. He moved slowly, knelt low, and spoke only in whispers. Holly held me the whole time, her arms around my chest, her breath steady even when her voice cracked. "You can rest now," she said. You've done more than enough." The last thing I heard was her voice. The last thing I felt was her hand on my heart. When I opened my eyes again, the sun was just a little brighter, the air a little lighter. I didn't feel tired. I felt full. Like everything I'd ever needed had been given to me. And I knew I had never been left behind. I had been loved every single day. Back in our house, time moved forward. Holly kept the same routines, kept the porch clean, the candles burning. She still walked in the mornings, still visited the shelter, still told my story. She built the new facility. It opened a year later. The plaque by the gate read, "Buddy's Haven, for those who just need time." Kids still read books to dogs there. Fosters still found families, and on the far wall hung 2 framed photos, one of me in the garden and one of me on the rug, eyes closed, curled in the sun. She kept the good days box, still added to it. And every time someone asked her why she does what she does, she smiled and said, "Because once a dog taught me how to be brave, and I've been building his legacy ever since."